For most of human history, civilizations leave scars. Ash layers, mass graves, weapons, written warnings. When a people fall, they usually fall loudly. But there are places on Earth where that didn't happen. Cities that didn't burn, walls that weren't breached, homes left standing, tools abandoned mid-use. And yet, the people vanished. No conquest records, no plague pits, no final inscriptions carved in desperation. They were simply gone. History doesn't like those places. Textbooks mention them briefly, then move on. Because unanswered questions don't fit clean timelines. Tonight, we're not asking who built pyramids. We're not chasing aliens. We're not accusing governments. We're looking at something far more disturbing. Civilizations that disappeared without a trace. And once you see how many there are, you stop asking what happened. You start asking why we aren't taught this. Let's start with one of the strangest. Mohenjo-Daro. In modern Pakistan, along the Indus River, lie the ruins of a city older than Rome, older than Athens, older than the biblical kingdoms. At its height, Mohenjo-Daro was massive, over 40,000 residents, advanced drainage, standardized brick sizes, grid-based streets. This wasn't a primitive settlement, this was urban planning. What's missing is what matters. No palaces, no temples towering over the poor, no mass graves, no signs of invasion. And here's the part historians struggle with. When Mohenjo-Daro was abandoned, it wasn't destroyed. There's no thick ash layer, no weapon damage, no evidence of siege. Homes were left intact. Valuables weren't looted, tools were left behind. People don't abandon cities like that unless something interrupts normal decision-making. Excavators found skeletons in the streets, not in burial grounds, not arranged, just where they fell. But here's the catch. There aren't enough bodies for a mass death. No plague pits, no famine markers, no mass trauma signatures. It's as if most of the population left, and a few didn't make it. The official explanation? Climate shift. River changes, slow decline. But slow decline doesn't leave meals unfinished. It doesn't leave tools mid-task. It doesn't empty a city while keeping its structure intact. Mohenjo-Daro wasn't erased. It was evacuated. Now let's move east, Angkor. Deep in Cambodia, hidden for centuries by jungle, lies the largest pre-industrial city complex ever built. Angkor wasn't just a city, it was an engineered landscape, reservoirs, canals, causeways stretching for miles. At its peak, Angkor supported close to 1 million people. And then, it faded. No sack, no recorded collapse, no mass graves. The temples remained, the water systems remained, but the people left. Again, the explanation is gradual environmental stress. But that explanation collapses under scrutiny. Angkor survived droughts before. It adapted, it rebuilt. What changed wasn't the environment. What changed was continuity. Administrative centers were abandoned rapidly, elite structures were left intact. No evidence of widespread violence. And here's something rarely emphasized. Angkor's water system shows signs of sudden disuse, not decay, not long-term failure, abandonment, as if maintaining it no longer mattered. Cities don't stop maintaining lifelines unless something more pressing overrides survival priorities. Now let's cross the ocean. Cahokia, near modern-day St. Louis, beneath highways and suburbs, lies what was once North America's largest pre-Columbian city. Cahokia rivaled medieval European cities in size, massive earthen mounds, astronomical alignments, trade networks spanning the continent. Then, around the 1300s, it emptied. No European contact, no conquest, just gone. Excavations show something unsettling. Homes left standing, fires extinguished permanently, food storage pits abandoned. The population didn't starve in place, they dispersed, but not gradually. The timeline suggests a relatively rapid departure. And again, no consensus explanation fits all the evidence. Environmental stress? Possibly. But Cahokia had adapted before. Social unrest? Maybe. But no widespread trauma markers. What remains is a pattern, large organized societies leaving infrastructure behind. Not rebuilding elsewhere nearby, not continuing the same cultural footprint, just ending. Now let's go south, the Maya. This one you've heard of, but not like this. The Maya didn't collapse in one dramatic event. They abandoned city after city. Tikal, Copan, Calakmul. Elite centers fell silent. Stelae stopped being carved. Construction halted mid-project. And then the jungle reclaimed everything. But here's the part often glossed over. The Maya didn't disappear as a people. They still exist today. What disappeared was something else. Their centralized civilization, their knowledge systems, their elite class. It wasn't extermination, it was a withdrawal. And the timing matters. Multiple cities were abandoned within a relatively narrow window. No single catastrophe explains it. Drought alone doesn't explain synchronized abandonment across different ecological zones. War doesn't explain intact structures and orderly departure. It looks less like collapse, and more like disengagement. Now let's go somewhere colder, Greenland, the Norse settlements. In the 10th century, Vikings established thriving colonies in Greenland. Farms, churches, trade routes, they survived for hundreds of years. Then, silence. When Europeans returned centuries later, they found ruins. No bodies, no battle damage, no signs of mass starvation. Personal items were left behind. Churches stood empty. And again, the explanation is climate cooling. But here's the issue. The Norse had survived harsh conditions before. They adapted elsewhere. They traded. They weren't helpless. Yet in Greenland, they didn't just adapt. They vanished. Not all at once, but decisively. And they didn't integrate with Inuit populations nearby. They didn't leave clear migration records. They simply ceased. Now let's go deeper underground. Derinkuyu. In Turkey, beneath the modern surface, lies a subterranean city capable of housing tens of thousands of people. Multiple levels, ventilation shafts, wells, livestock areas. This wasn't a bunker for a few weeks. This was long-term habitation. The question historians avoid is simple. What were they hiding from? And more importantly, where did they go? These underground cities weren't destroyed. They weren't sealed by enemies. They were sealed from the inside, as if whatever threat existed, passed, and whoever went underground came back up, or left entirely. Now let's step back. Indus Valley, Southeast Asia, North America, Mesoamerica, Northern Atlantic, Anatolia. Different eras, different cultures, different technologies, same result. Organized withdrawal, no clear cause. And here's the uncomfortable truth. History prefers violence. It's easy to explain. War, plague, conquest. But when people leave without chaos, it suggests something else. Information, a decision, a threshold crossed. Civilizations don't abandon cities unless staying becomes worse than leaving. So what could override everything? Not hunger, not invasion, not ideology. Something that makes infrastructure irrelevant. Something that makes territory meaningless. Something that turns cities into liabilities. Now consider this. In multiple cases, abandonment coincides with environmental anomalies. Sudden climate shifts, hydrological changes, unexplained events in sediment layers. Not always catastrophic, but disruptive. And here's where historians grow cautious, because some evidence doesn't fit known natural disasters. At Mohenjo-Daro, elevated radiation levels were reported in early studies. At Angkor, water system failure doesn't align cleanly with drought timelines. At Cahokia, soil exhaustion doesn't match the speed of departure. None of these points prove a single cause. But together, they point to something history rarely discusses. Threshold events. Moments where conditions cross a line, and societies choose flight over fight. And once a civilization disperses, it rarely reforms in the same way. Knowledge fragments, records vanish, skills degrade, the survivors remember, but don't rebuild. Why? Because whatever caused the departure may not have ended. Now let's talk about silence. One of the strangest aspects of vanished civilizations is the lack of warnings. No carved messages saying, "We fled because." No final inscriptions. No legacy explanations. That suggests urgency, or secrecy, or both. If you're leaving forever, you usually explain why, unless explaining it doesn't help those who remain, or unless the knowledge itself is dangerous. Now consider this. Modern society is built on continuity, supply chains, electric grids, data networks. If we faced a threshold event today, would we leave warnings? Or would we prioritize evacuation? Would we carve tablets? Or grab what we can and move? Civilizations of the past didn't have cloud backups. When they left, their knowledge left with them. And that's what we call collapse. But collapse implies failure. What if some collapses were choices? Strategic withdrawals from conditions that made centralized life untenable? What if staying meant extinction, and leaving meant survival, at the cost of history? Because here's the final pattern. Civilizations that vanish often leave descendants who remember fragments, myths of golden ages, flood legends, stories of angry skies, gods departing, not as explanations, as echoes. And those echoes appear across cultures that never met. That's not proof. But it's not coincidence either. History is comfortable with ruins. It's uncomfortable with absence, because absence forces a question with no villain. If nobody destroyed them, then what forced them to go? And more importantly, if it happened before, what makes us think it can't happen again? Civilizations don't always fall screaming. Sometimes they walk away. And history calls it a mystery because the alternative is worse. Because the alternative suggests that progress doesn't protect you. Knowledge doesn't guarantee survival, and cities are only permanent until they aren't. If you enjoyed this exploration, stay curious. Because the most dangerous stories in history aren't the ones about conquest. They're the ones about people who saw something coming and left before anyone else noticed. History doesn't record their reasons, only their absence. And absence is the loudest evidence of all.